And then he always called Don Jesse.
Yeah.
And he would say, "Jesse, we're short."
Ron Howard has long been seen as one of Hollywood's safest hands, a steady presence in an industry known for chaos and excess. His voice has always sounded calm, his smile reassuring, his career almost improbably consistent. For decades, audiences believed they knew him completely. The child star who grew up without scandal, the director who never lost control, the family man who balanced success with grace. Yet behind that carefully maintained image lived a man carrying quiet weight, unresolved pain, and deeply personal regrets. Only recently has Ron allowed the public to glimpse the emotional cost of a life lived under constant expectation. What emerged was not a tale of fame, but of sacrifice, fear, love, and the slow realization that even the most admired lives hold invisible wounds. A childhood defined before choice. This paragraph explains how Ron Howard's sense of self was formed before he had the freedom to discover who he might be on his own. Being born into a performing family meant that structure, responsibility, and professionalism surrounded him from the very start. Work wasn't something adults did elsewhere. It was woven into everyday life. Studios became familiar spaces, and expectations quietly replaced the spontaneous joy most children experience. While his parents truly tried to protect him, protection in that environment still meant being watched, guided, and evaluated. Ron learned discipline and emotional restraint early, long before he learned freedom or self-exploration. Approval became tied to how well he performed, how calm he remained, and how reliable he was. This wasn't cruelty or neglect, but a subtle conditioning that shaped his understanding of worth. Over time, this belief followed him into adulthood, influencing how he approached work, relationships, and even rest. Slowing down felt unsafe because value had always been connected to output. His childhood lacked something essential: choice. That absence didn't create obvious trauma, but it left a quiet echo. It explains why later in life, stepping away from work felt emotionally difficult, even when he knew he needed to. Becoming America's son. This paragraph captures the emotional contradiction of being widely adored while feeling deeply alone. As Opie Taylor, Ron Howard became a symbol of innocence that audiences embraced as their own. That level of affection can appear comforting, but for a child, it also creates invisible pressure. Millions felt connected to him, yet few truly knew him. Behind the scenes, Ron's reality was much quieter. While other children played, he studied alone, reinforcing the feeling that he existed alongside normal life rather than within it. His father's guidance helped him stay grounded in his craft, but it couldn't protect him from the psychological weight of constant observation. Being praised, watched, and idealized left little room for mistakes or emotional honesty. This paragraph shows how admiration can slowly turn into confinement. Ron wasn't just playing a role on screen, he was expected to represent it off camera as well. That blurred boundary between performance and identity made it difficult to understand where one ended and the other began. The wounds this created weren't caused by harm, but by loss. Loss of privacy, freedom, and ownership over self. Those early experiences planted seeds of identity struggle that followed him into adulthood. The silent pressure of growing up too fast. This section focuses on the inner world Ron developed as a way to survive his environment. From an early age, he learned that composure was rewarded while vulnerability was quietly discouraged. Fear and insecurity weren't explored or expressed. They were managed privately. His education was fragmented. Friendships came and went, and nothing felt permanent. Praise was constant, but reassurance was rare, creating a reliance on external validation instead of inner confidence. Ron learned to project calm and certainty even when he didn't feel it, a skill that helped him professionally, but created emotional distance within himself. Over time, the gap between how he felt and how he appeared widened. This internal split shaped his adult life, making him capable, reliable, and successful, yet emotionally guarded. The paragraph helps explain why later achievements didn't bring peace. When someone grows up believing emotions must be hidden to keep things running smoothly, slowing down feels dangerous. Asking for help feels like failure. This wasn't the result of neglect, but adaptation. Ron became strong early because his environment demanded it. That strength served him well, but it also made vulnerability feel unfamiliar and risky long after childhood ended. Trapped in perpetual innocence. This paragraph explores the quiet frustration of being trapped in an image that no longer fits who you are becoming. As a young adult, Ron returned to television only to find himself boxed into another role defined by innocence and simplicity. While the world around him was changing rapidly, his character remained frozen in time. That disconnect created a sense of invisibility. He was successful, admired, and present, yet emotionally unheard. Attempts to introduce depth or realism into the role were rejected, reinforcing the idea that his purpose was to comfort audiences rather than reflect truth. This section explains how being valued for what you represent instead of who you are can feel suffocating. Ron wasn't rebelling or acting out. He was quietly fading inside expectations that no longer matched his internal growth. The longer he stayed, the more he felt his own development being denied. This wasn't about being tired of fame, but about losing access to his evolving identity. The realization that acting no longer allowed him to grow wasn't dramatic or public. It was internal, gradual, and deeply personal. That realization became the emotional turning point that pushed him toward a new path. Directing as escape and survival. This paragraph reframes Ron Howard's move into directing as an emotional necessity rather than a calculated career ambition. Acting had always placed him inside someone else's vision, someone else's story. Directing offered something entirely different: control, authorship, and voice. For the first time, he could shape narratives instead of simply performing them. That sense of ownership felt liberating and deeply affirming. Success followed quickly, reinforcing the belief that he had finally found where he belonged. However, the paragraph also reveals the hidden cost of this transformation. Ron threw himself fully into his work, driven by the belief that excellence was the price of acceptance. Control became both his refuge and his burden. He worked relentlessly, not because of ego, but because he feared losing the stability and respect he had gained. Survival had taught him that commitment meant total immersion. This explains why his directing career, though highly successful, was also emotionally exhausting. What began as escape slowly evolved into another cycle of pressure. The paragraph highlights how even positive change can carry unresolved patterns forward if those patterns are never examined. The cost of perfection. This final section confronts the physical and emotional toll of Ron's relentless work ethic. His dedication to authenticity and precision earned him admiration and trust, but it also demanded more than his body and mind could sustain. Long hours, constant responsibility, and refusal to compromise slowly pushed him beyond healthy limits. When his body finally collapsed, it forced a reckoning he could no longer delay. This moment mattered because it wasn't just exhaustion. It was a confrontation with vulnerability and mortality. For someone who had always been in control, losing that control physically was terrifying. The paragraph emphasizes that this collapse wasn't failure, but a warning. Dedication without balance, no matter how well-intentioned, becomes destructive. Returning to work didn't erase what he'd learned. Something fundamental had shifted. Ron could no longer pretend that success came without cost. This paragraph helps readers understand that his later reflections were not sudden realizations, but the result of years of accumulated strain finally becoming impossible to ignore. Success that came with absence. This paragraph speaks to one of the quietest but most painful costs of success: being physically present in name, but emotionally and practically absent in reality. Ron Howard's career required long stretches away from home, and while his intentions were loving, intention alone couldn't replace presence. Phone calls, letters, and reassurances were never enough to fill the space created by absence. When he returned home, The changes were subtle but devastating. Children taller, routines different, emotional rhythms altered. These weren't dramatic losses, but cumulative ones, which made them harder to recognize in the moment and heavier in hindsight. His wife's quiet endurance represents the invisible labor so many partners carry without applause or acknowledgement. This paragraph humanizes absence by showing how it doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in through missed bedtime stories, unshared meals, and moments that never get a second chance. Ron's realization that no award could compensate for lost time reflects a truth many people learn too late. His ambition wasn't rooted in selfishness, but in responsibility and drive. Still, success demanded sacrifices he never fully understood until the cost became visible. Repeating the same mistakes, this section reveals how awareness alone doesn't automatically lead to change. Even after recognizing the cost of his absence, Ron found himself slipping back into the same habits. The beliefs driving those habits were deeply embedded, formed in childhood where productivity meant safety and approval. Saying no felt dangerous, as if turning down work might erase his value. Rest felt unearned, almost irresponsible. Each return home carried a familiar ache, reinforcing the painful pattern rather than breaking it. This repetition makes Ron's story more relatable, not less. Growth is rarely clean or linear. Understanding a problem doesn't mean you're instantly free from it. This paragraph emphasizes that real change requires confronting discomfort, not just regret. Ron had to question long-held assumptions about success, worth, and obligation. That process was slow and unsettling, involving self-doubt rather than dramatic transformation. This moment marks a shift from simply feeling regret to examining its roots. Instead of asking what he missed, Ron begins asking why he kept choosing the same path. That deeper questioning opened the door to emotional honesty and lasting change. Love measured in regret. This paragraph speaks to a kind of regret that no amount of time, praise, or success can truly soften. Ron Howard isn't looking back wishing he had chosen different projects or taken bigger creative risks. Instead, his regret lives in the ordinary moments that quietly shape a family's life. Being present for daily routines, watching his children grow in real time, and sharing simple moments are what he feels he lost. What makes this regret so heavy is that success didn't lessen it. Awards and recognition offered no comfort for absence, and financial security couldn't replace time. For someone who spent decades appearing calm, steady, and in control, speaking openly about this regret marked a profound emotional shift. His honesty doesn't feel rehearsed or dramatic. It feels reflective and sincere. By allowing regret to exist alongside pride in his achievements, Ron becomes deeply human rather than distant or heroic. This paragraph reminds us that growth doesn't always arrive early or cleanly. Sometimes it comes later, shaped by reflection rather than urgency. Ron's willingness to name what he lost suggests a real commitment to live differently moving forward. Here, regret becomes a guide, pointing him toward what truly matters instead of punishing him for the past. A brotherhood forged in fame. This section explains why Ron Howard's relationship with his brother carries such deep emotional meaning. Growing up together in an industry that few people truly understand created a bond formed through shared survival, not shared success. Their childhood didn't follow normal rules. They learned responsibility, professionalism, and emotional restraint far earlier than most children. Because of this, they understood each other in ways no outsider ever could. Fame was part of their world, but it wasn't the glue that held them together. What connected them was navigating pressure, isolation, and expectation side by side. Clint represented something grounding for Ron, a reminder of familiarity, safety, and unconditional understanding in a life filled with constant change. Even as their careers moved in different directions, that bond remained intact because it was rooted in shared experience rather than achievement. This paragraph helps us understand why later struggles affected Ron so deeply. Losing that connection, even emotionally, would mean losing someone who had witnessed his entire journey from the beginning. Their relationship wasn't just brotherhood. It was a living archive of childhood, survival, and shared identity that no one else could replicate. Watching a brother struggle. This paragraph marks a shift from connection to fear and helplessness. Watching his brother struggle with addiction placed Ron in a role he had never been comfortable with. Loving someone without being able to fix the problem. For a man used to solving challenges through effort and discipline, this was deeply unsettling. Setting boundaries came not from control or judgment, but from care, and that made the process emotionally painful. This section captures the complexity of loving someone when effort alone isn't enough. Even as recovery strengthened their bond, Ron was left with lingering guilt. He questioned whether his own focus on work and success had blinded him to the depth of his brother's pain earlier on. That kind of self-questioning is deeply human. When someone we love suffers, it's natural to look inward and wonder what we missed. This paragraph reinforces a powerful truth. Professional success does not protect us from personal fear, loss, or vulnerability. No matter how accomplished someone becomes, love still exposes them to helplessness. Ron's experience shows how painful it is to watch someone you care about fight a battle you cannot fight for them, no matter how much you want to. The fear he cannot control. This paragraph captures the quiet terror of facing something that offers no solutions. Ron Howard's life has been built around planning, directing, and fixing problems. When faced with a situation he cannot control, that foundation is shaken. Action gives way to waiting. Certainty is replaced with hope. Childhood memories resurface, not as comfort, but as reminders of how fragile time truly is. The fear described here isn't loud or dramatic. It's constant, subtle, and exhausting. It strips away the professional armor Ron has relied on for decades and reveals vulnerability that cannot be managed through work or discipline. For someone who spent much of his life staying busy to feel safe, sitting with uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable. This moment forces him to confront emotions he once avoided by staying productive. The paragraph shows how the threat of loss instantly reorders priorities. What once felt urgent fades into the background. What once felt distant becomes painfully close. It reminds readers that love creates the deepest fear because it exposes how little control we truly have over the people and moments that matter most. Stepping back to hold on this section shows how Ron responds to emotional realization with intention rather than panic. Instead of withdrawing or pushing forward blindly, he makes a conscious choice to step back. This isn't about quitting his career or abandoning his identity. It's about protecting what still remains. Time, once scheduled around work demands, becomes something to guard carefully. Silence, once uncomfortable, becomes meaningful and restorative. This paragraph emphasizes that redefining success often requires unlearning values that once felt essential. For Ron, productivity had long been tied to worth. Now, presence becomes the measure of meaning. Relationships outweigh recognition. This shift is quiet and thoughtful, not dramatic or reactionary. It comes from reflection and honesty, rather than fear. Ron isn't trying to rewrite the past or punish himself for earlier choices. He's choosing to live differently going forward. This paragraph highlights an important truth. Sometimes holding on to what matters most requires stepping away from what once defined us. Choosing connection over accomplishment isn't weakness. It's an act of clarity and strength. A legacy redefined, the final paragraph reframes Ron Howard's life through a lens of compassion and honesty. His legacy expands beyond awards, box office success, and professional respect to include emotional truth. By openly acknowledging his struggles, he offers something rare in a culture that often celebrates perfection and composure. This transparency doesn't diminish his achievements. It deepens them by adding humanity. The lesson here isn't about Hollywood or career success. It's about listening to ourselves, to the people we love, and to what truly matters, before time forces those realizations upon us. The paragraph reminds readers that admiration often hides unseen sacrifices. By naming those sacrifices, Ron allows his story to resonate far beyond fame. His greatest contribution may not be a film, but the example he sets by embracing reflection, vulnerability, and late-earned wisdom. The closing message is quiet but powerful. Acknowledging our shadows rather than denying them can become the most meaningful achievement of all.